I'll just ask you guys also to reflect on the same, and as you talk from your perspective. We have been doing some consumer research over the last 6 months, and I always take consumer research with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because depending on the question that you ask, the answer that you get is something that you may or may not like. So interestingly, if you look at consumer sentiment, pre-COVID, obviously it was at a certain level. Uh, as the pandemic progressed, the consumer sentiment in terms of how it's going to impact them reduced. People were more fearful. But interestingly, since June, it has started improving. It's almost like while the cases are increasing, consumers have gotten used to it and are saying, "Hey, we are not going to shut down our lives. We are going to come back to normal." So that's one piece that we are seeing happening. The second is in terms of actual purchase. Now, both because of income as well as consumer confidence as well as supply side access, we saw a sharp fall in the months of April and May, but obviously some of that has changed over the last 3 months. So what has changed in the last 3 months in terms of the actual purchase, etc., would be great to hear from you. Uh, our high frequency analysis shows that, if you look at the months of August and September, things are actually back to 90 plus 95% in some categories of pre-COVID normal. So that's the second piece which is there. And third is, interestingly, there are some categories where people are intending to spend more and are actually spending more. And Sanjay, one of the categories that you've been associated with past, or actually two of the categories, both in terms of health and wellness, in terms of Saffola and related, and home, which is Urban Ladder's forte. People are getting more bullish around that. So that's just setting the context. The first question, and we can go in any order, was as you look at consumer behavior, what changes have you seen in your categories, and what do you expect to continue even when the new normal ends up happening? So uh, maybe Amit, I can start with you.
Hey, thanks, Abhishek. So if you look at the consumer electronics category, and more specifically the whole category of computing, it has clearly seen an upside post-COVID for very natural and obvious reasons. Kids studying from home virtually, and a lot of small businesses who had to then go remote, companies in the kind of companies we work, we went remote, and what that did was it really triggered the demand to have additional devices at home. And if you look at the context of personal computers in India, India has been one of the lowest penetrated markets, so as to say, even compared to, you would be surprised, markets like Sri Lanka and Indonesia. And somewhere along the line, smartphones really came in, and people started feeling that, hey, I can do everything that I need to do with a smartphone, and kids don't need a computer till they really need. And besides a work computer or a work laptop, even if there's a shared device, it's okay. And even if there is no device, it's okay, because for a few light tasks, people can around the family can always share and use. And that has totally gone out of the window, because people suddenly found that they were short on devices, they were short on quality tech. They had two, if you had, let's say, two kids, they couldn't have shared one device. So suddenly the attitude towards tech changed. And what people would have thought of buying when, let's say, the kids grow up, they had to start thinking about it today. And also in certainly the more privileged parts of the country where there is income to spend, people started thinking of maybe having one device per child. So that attitude has certainly shifted, and we've seen that change quite dramatically post COVID. So that's been a really big one in the category. You're on mute, Abhishek.
So personal computer has really become personal and not a household
Yeah,
possession.
essential
Okay,
in a
great.
lot of ways.
So
Yes.
just to,
Yeah,
so my son recently bought a computer worth 2,69,000 bucks. So
Is he a gamer?
just for gaming, yeah. So
Gamer, yes, absolutely. Gaming shot
so
through the
it's
roof.
now not only in terms of study. So somebody has a Mac, somebody for gaming is another one. So I think the demand, since the entertainment has to be within the home and you can't step out, in these categories, and probably those are kind of really, given the disposable incomes, I think you're seeing traction in some of the adjacent categories as well.
love it.
Absolutely.
So, just asking you, maybe next, so we've seen PC really becoming an essential personal possession. You know, your categories, your categories would have seen a mix of both, right? Personal care has, generally come under a little bit of pressure, while the health nutrition portfolio has seen a lot of traction. But what changes in behavior have you seen?
So, yeah, thanks, Abhi, for asking that. I think they are, what I would say is, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. And I would say what would have taken us about next 5 to 10 years in India, last 8 months of COVID has done to the word immunity. And as you had kind of alluded, we had gone back and we used to research the word immunity. And often people did not understand what immunity is all about. It was a very misunderstood word. What is immunity? अच्छा बीमार नहीं पड़ते मतलब you don't fall sick. Is that what is immunity? What is immunity? But today, to do any Google search, I think the most search word would be immunity and how do you kind of enhance immunity. So it has been a sea change as far as the landscape is concerned and how people are kind of really talking about the overall wellness. And I will say wellness not only in terms of physical, but also emotional, intellectual, spiritual, occupational, financial, social, environmental, the wellness, the entire thing. I think the ecosystem today, from a nice to have for consumers, I think there's a need to have a preventive approach to wellness. And that's something I think which, at least in my view, will stay because COVID is not going to go anywhere soon, even if you look at the vaccine. And we know habits get formed over a period of time. And if you talk about this going lasting till at least 2021, people are going to get into the habit of consuming healthier foods. So obviously the other trend is people are cooking at home. Earlier the
Yeah,
Swiggies and the Zomatos, I know in my house most of the food was being ordered from outside. But last 7 months we haven't ordered from outside. We are experimenting with cooking. We are cooking less oil, no oil, with taste. We are obviously buying the best ingredients. We are looking at organic ingredients. I think that's trending well. So you are spending all that which you are spending on restaurants outside, the same. So probably my monthly bills have not gone down. And
yeah.
as much, but yeah, I'm buying dry fruit. What 12,000? My wife the other day ordered 12,000 bucks of dry food. I said, "Are we consuming all this?" He said, "Yeah." Sitting at home, what are you doing? You're kind of getting the best ingredients. And earlier in office, obviously you were not never around and you were never consuming all this. So I think behaviorally, I think people are getting even more conscious on the cleaner labels. People are, there's a huge trend on Ayurveda, I would say, that's coming back. If you look at self-care, a lot of people, ashwagandha, chavanprash, ginger, all this is kind of really trending. Most people, even if they're not buying vitamin and dietary supplement, the vitamin C is kind of really trended well because we understand the advantage of vitamin C. But outside the entire remedies at home and using this Ayurveda, that's kind of trending in very well. So I think there's surely going to be a belief which is going to be built with the younger who are not probably as familiar with the Ayurveda because we actually as really grew up with that, but I can see the younger ones growing with that. So people
So,
are going to be
Ajay, I have
more
one.
and more invested
Yeah.
in self-care, in taking vitamins and dietary supplements, in taking care of their nutrition and what exactly are the ingredients in that, and all this is going to stay. So if you really look at the industry for us, and whether you take the vitamin dietary supplement, whether you take the fortified foods, whether you take the naturally healthy, it's about 70,000 crores. My guess is we'll be growing at least 15 to 16% as we kind of step out. And for us, at least, I can tell you, we are really we are probably going to have the best share after about 8 or 10 years in nutrition as far as our company.
Ajay, I have one question for you. Whenever you ask people or consumers to say, are you concerned about health and so on, people obviously say yes, right? I mean, that's a pre-COVID thing. Have you actually seen change in behavior, well, where people are actually spending money on healthier ingredients, healthier stuff? Are you actually seeing that given that you are one of the bigger players in the space?
Yes, and we have a few researches which are kind of telling us that
Mm,
people are trending towards organic. And again, I can tell you, organic is another one very big misunderstood word. People don't understand what is natural, what is organic, and that's been a debate. And a lot of times, natural is kind of construed as organic. It's very clear that people have started reading the labels. People are trading up, at least in this category, to buy and get better ingredients. And I can tell you that's probably the way of kind of spending on themselves, because probably they are not other modes. So now the question is, as we open up and restaurants kind of come back, will this stay? Will this not stay? My guess is it will stay, because the period this has lasted, it has not been
okay.
15 days. It's been almost 6, 7 months. So it's becoming almost a way of life. Now, ask me to kind of go back to normal, non-organic, white rice. Probably I'll not go, because I've got attuned to a certain kind of this thing. So people are upgrading in these categories where the affordability is there. Obviously, there's also a segment which is impacted in terms of pickup and stuff. So probably there would be a little bit of impact there. But wherever they are, I think everyone is trying to stretch and at least invest in their food and their nutrition, because they know there's a direct correlation between immunity and your good health there.
Got it. So Sanjay, moving to you, the previous two categories actually have seen an uptick, but obviously mobility came under pressure because people were scared and were just not traveling that much. Uh, what have you seen in different phases of the pandemic, and what's the outlook from your vantage point?
Yeah, so we are the antithesis of COVID. If COVID is about staying indoors, then Uber is about helping you move, right? So, uh, pertinent question, because we've seen 2 or 3 phases in which our businesses got impacted, and I'll talk about those three. And but the one thing that, a couple of things that have remained constant across these three, which were new and interesting, was one, a new attribute got added to the category, which was hygiene safety.
Yeah,
Prior to that, if your cab was a little unclean, or if your passenger was not clean, or if they were sneezing, you had a general health concern, but it wasn't something that you took very seriously. And for us, we had to reshape our entire consumer experience, both for the rider and the driver, to now cater for this new attribute. And that was a fantastic experience, because it's a digital business. The digital part is easy, you can do that, but then to actually make that experience work on ground, it takes a lot of effort. So that's something that I think will stay for a long period, and was a new muscle that we built. And the second one, which actually I'm very proud of as a citizen as well, was this whole shared responsibility. I feel people believe that if I'm responsible, that's the best way to take care of this pandemic. And just over the last 7, 8 months, we've seen umpteen experience or examples of riders showing a lot of self-care and responsibility towards managing COVID. Drivers doing this. I don't know whether you guys saw this post where a driver actually canceled on a trip for a rider not wearing a mask. And the rider put that up on social, saying another driver canceled from Uber. And the entire uproar was he did the right thing because, by being safe. So I feel this entire piece of trying to do good for society is very, very positive change across this. In terms of business, the first phase of the lockdown was just no one moved. And as a company, we also believe that was the right thing. We, in fact, put out communications saying that, don't move out if you can help it. The second phase, which lasted for a very short period of time, was just essential travel. If someone needed to go to the hospital, make an airport trip, they kind of made it, and they were just concerned about getting transportation because, Avik, what had happened was there were just no modes of transportation. Your Local cab guys were not there. You were not driving. You needed a license. So anything we do, obviously, we were very concerned about safety. So we went out of our way to make sure that those trips were safe. But the primary attribute for the customer was just get me there because I'm stuck in a different place. My parents are in a different place, and I just want to make that trip. Over the last 2, 3 months, like you said, consumer confidence. Also, people need to move. Some of us are privileged enough to work from home, but majority of India needs to actually go to the physical place and work. So we have seen business recover, and what has enabled that recovery is safety. So people are anyway being very cautious themselves, but we've also worked very hard to try and make the experience safer, and that has brought business back. But yeah, very checkered over the last 7 months, but in a much happier pace today than where we were 7 months back.
Great. So, one quick question, just building on the previous, we've talked about the changes which have happened in the last few months. And Ajay, and you talked about some of these are going to continue, even quote unquote, in the new reality, because, these have been habit forming. If you were to think of the categories that you are operating in, what are the one or two changes that you think will continue to happen or prevail, even, pick a number, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months from now, when quote unquote the new reality sets in? So what are the one or two things that you think will stick even then?
Yeah. So I think the thing about one is obviously in our business, as we kind of move, we have been a very physical business because we also have a unique model where there is social selling, which is there. And I can tell you today, 100% of it is virtual. So people are kind of getting in touch with virtual. My fear is that since the thing of human bonding, and I can see it in families now. So I know, though I'm not doing it because I'm super conscious, but my sister, other people, they are at the first occasion they're trying and going meeting people because they want to have that physical
Hmm.
and contact, because that's what's comforting. And no matter how many Zoom calls you're doing or virtual, is never the same feeling to kind of be connected. So
Right.
that which we don't want the system to snap back to, because we do feel social commerce is really the way ahead, and it really improves your reach because you can kind of reach so many more people across geographies, across locations, across cultures. But my fear is that as we kind of it normalizes people wanting people and having the physical contact, a lot of that will kind of snap back where people would like to kind of have one-on-one interactions and build their businesses and do the kind of selling. I think Sanjay was kind of alluding to Milk Basket. So we are all kind of now ordering to Milk Basket.
Yeah.
So as once this goes away, whether Milk Basket is going to stay, I think for me, it's surely going
It
to
will.
stay off live because we don't want to be in touch. But a lot of people just want to go to the market and kind of socialize and do it that way. So it might be different for those guys. So yeah, that's one thing which I really hope we become more and more virtual, and we kind of use the social commerce and the tools. It's so effective. The other is work from home. I think that should. So we are kind of at Amway really contemplating of really making it completely optional whether you work from home or you work from the office. And there are a lot of organizations who are thinking that mandate. Now that will create its own set of stuff. So I can tell you majority would want to kind of come back, and I can already see a lot of people who are kind of saying, okay, come back, come back. The same Excel which was taking half an hour to make, you're spending a whole day to kind of complete that Excel. So we need to be in the same office, kind of connecting with each other. So I do hope work by home, work by design stays, but I do fear that a lot of organizations will come back to the same old way of working in the basis.
Amit, so do you think that, got used to having the uh, of their own, I mean, they're going to get used to it, there's going to be a new reality, or that's going to be the new reality, or online? I don't know, how much of your business has shifted to online, and is that likely to continue, or do you think physical is going to come back?
Yeah, you're right. Online has obviously seen a surge. And now that again remains to be seen. I feel I do agree with Ajay that there is certainly a need among consumers to also, look for a lot of us. Uh, Shopping is part of leisure. It's good time off, so it's not going to go away. I mean, at the first instance that we got a chance as a family, we rushed to the mall, right? So I don't think that's going to go away. Plus, in categories which require a little bit more research, a little bit of know-how, you want to ask around, you want to visit a few stores. So I think it would come back to some extent. But yes, there is also reality in the fact that a lot of people who wouldn't have considered buying online have sampled it, have experienced it, and a lot of them will stay back. In a classical FM funnel sense, a lot more trials have happened for so many digital experiences that were meeting a lot of barrier. Now, people who've experienced it and have had a good one at that, there you should expect repeats, and that would certainly grow that part of the business. Among other things, I look, learn from home and work from home have been big, massive changes, at least in the context of our category. If you look at learn from home, the first wave was really about buying, schools trying to equip, getting classes started, all of that, which was just trying to respond to the situation. And as time has passed by, there is a portion of schools and students who've kind of settled into that rhythm, but there is also a massive struggle. It's not as easy to engage a child. It's not as easy as putting a PC in one's hand and a tablet in another, and then they shall learn. And that we're realizing. So I think that hybrid model will certainly evolve, that people talk about. A lot of teachers and students, a lot of teachers and schools were caught completely in a sticky spot because teachers
Yeah.
didn't have computers, they didn't know how to use it. Schools really didn't have. By the way, an interesting fact, in most cases in B2B businesses, we would go talk to the CIO, the IT person who makes a really educated decision. Now, hundreds of schools, thousands of schools were to go online. Who was making a decision? And we realized that the good old computer science teacher was in action, right? There was no one else to consult. So I mean, completely different dynamics. So I think the learn from home system will evolve. And as a company, we've started to move our attention beyond just devices. So we're bringing in a lot of software solution systems beyond just hardware to make this engagement really work. So yeah, so hybrid there. On work from home, that model is a dramatically different model, and a large part of our business is actually B2B, where companies buy computers for employees, and that again is likely to have a profound impact, not just in terms of buying, because you can't suddenly, everyone needs to have a laptop. You can't expect people to come work on a desktop and go back. But then it changes the rules in terms of how software is used, how systems are used. How do you provide support? It's a totally different thing to, as an employee, walk up to an IT desk and say, मेरा laptop खराब हो गया. पर
Yeah.
when some 10,000 log are in some 50 cities, how do you provide support?
Yeah.
So it also has brought forth very, very different challenges. I think work from home will certainly go up. There is no doubt about it. As all of us are discovering, there is value in it for certainly large parts of the for significant parts of the workforce. Yeah, but I'd be really interested to see how collaboration and innovation really happens. I mean, in this space, it's very, very difficult to do ideation, to build things together. So yeah, it remains to be seen.
Interesting. Sanjay, over to you.
Yeah, on a lighter note, when I was on Safola, we met this doctor, and he said that 95% of the patients after heart surgery go back to normal behavior within a week. So I think a lot of us are
Yeah.
going to revert to
Interesting.
being normal. Yeah. But there are two changes, and I think our co-panelists have already spoken about it, which I think may stay back. I think one is where you don't make the decision and the institution makes it for you. So I think work from home, learn from home, other such pieces where I am a part decision maker could impact our business and they could stay for long. If a lot of organizations continue to do work from home, then obviously the need for mobility reduces slightly. And I think the second one, which is very interesting, is that we have got a lot of trials in some of our new products like auto. We have doorstep pickup, and just that enables you don't need to actually go out of your house, stand in a crowded area to get your auto ride. And a lot of those users would have never considered us because just habit, you get out, go to your auto stand and take the trip. And now, they didn't have a choice. So we've seen a lot of new users come to the category. And just to Amit's point, some of them will stay back because they found the experience good. Some of them will stay back because, or at least introduce it as part of their use cases. So I think there'll be a balance in terms of business. Some will go up, some will go down. But what is going to be the new normal? Quite honestly, I don't know at this stage. What I do know is that right now there's a divided camp. There are some people who believe that it should not stop life, and there are some people who believe that it's better to be safe.
Interesting. So this gets me to one question that I'd like to ask each, and it's a very specific question. I strongly believe that if there is one person in the organization who represents the consumer, it's actually the CMO, right? CMO is the custodian of the consumer, and one of the key roles is to understand what the customer wants. And I have seen many CMOs adopt different ways to figure that out. Research, etc., is one part of it. Syndicated data is another part of it. But many CEOs I know actually go and talk and meet to consumers, right? Because you have to get that first-hand feel. Obviously, last 6 months, that has been difficult to do in person. What have you guys done to actually get the pulse of the consumer and the true pulse of the consumer? I'm sure there are multiple marketeers in the audience. And if you can share a personal insight as to what you have done, what you have found helpful, I think it may be helpful for the audience as well. Sanjay, you want to go?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this. So it is challenging for sure. And it's much easier when you don't have these restrictions. So like Abhi, the usual stuff still remains. We're doing consumer research, we have our panels, and I think that is great. But the one insight that struck me is that the driver ends up meeting a lot more consumers in the real world. So one of the things that we do is a ride along. Initially, the focus was to do it with the customer to try and figure out what the attributes are, et cetera, et cetera. Now we do it with the driver because we're just able to get a plethora of experiences. And what we're really looking to do is that what are the anxieties? And the riders are actually very, very vocal about the anxieties today. So, if you speak to a driver, they will precisely tell you कि अगर एक customer आएगा तो उसको ये 3 चीजें चाहिए. And if you're able to solve for this, they are fine. So a lot of our learning has actually come from being closer to the driver partners during this period of time.
Interesting.
And we've got a lot of insights from there. And the other piece is our frequency of research has increased quite a lot. We felt that the quantum of change was very fast. So our panels, etc., used to be slightly more long drawn because categories don't change that quickly.
Right.
We've just shortened the life cycles for that to have a slightly more constant drumbeat. But those were the 2 pieces that we've used.
Very, very helpful. Amit?
I think formal research is certainly important, and we do that off and on. But for some categories, I'm sure it's true for Sanjay's category as well. You get real-time feedback today. Someone went to a store, didn't like, puts up a review on Google My Business, product reviews straight on an Amazon page. It doesn't really take too much, or if you've not served the customer well on a post-sales issue, you hear it straight away on social media. So research today has become like an everyday thing, and it hits you straight in the face. So no real surprises there. But yes, we did have to actively keep a tab on what was happening, especially because For example, people were not able to go to service centers, and a lot of stuff was kind of piling up in a backlog. So and it was evident that when things open up, there would be like a deluge. So how do you prepare yourself for that? Now, one of the things that again was now one of the things I've found very useful over a period of time uh, with age is, hey, why don't you think of yourself as a customer or a consumer in most instances, and you would have a fairly instinctive answer to how the other person would feel. Uh, Unlikely that you would be really, really removed or alien. And one of the things we figured when the lockdown started was people in the group, your group of friends, everyone started asking, "Acha, batao, which laptop should I buy?" And that's when it was very clear that there is no clarity about how to choose a laptop. Most cases, you'd walk into a store and say, look, tell me what to buy. Ask the promoter on the ground, the sales guy. And now what do you do if you can't walk into a store? So a little thing we figured out, people were having conversations on social, which brand is good to buy, what do I buy for my kid? Someone wants to game, what do I buy? So it was very clear, and therefore what we did as a result was did very, very non-fancy stuff, like put out a guide for people to choose a laptop easily, like a menu card to say, hey, kid of a certain age, learning requirements of a certain kind, these are the right kind of things to buy. Or, here's a helpline, call us. And we will ask you a few questions and give you an unbiased recommendation on what kind of technology to buy. So yeah, I mean, that was great learning for me to go back to things that we don't normally think about. I mean, at that point in time, that little 5-page guide was more valuable to customers than a piece of fancy television advert.
Ajay, how do you
Yep.
find the pulse of the consumer?
For us, I think it's completely, I say it's contrary to, I think what COVID has done for us is that it's kind of digitalized the entire people who are not digital savvy. So now we have a 550,000 micro entrepreneurs who are connected to us, who are kind of promoting our products, and they were kind of not really connected to us. But this COVID actually, within 2 or 3 weeks, all of them were on Zoom and they were kind of communicating. And we never had an issue of feedback. The business we are in, we get feedback within few seconds of launch. So it's not so. In fact, brands can kind of come to us and say, okay, do you have a sense of your pulse of your consumer? We have an absolute pulse of a consumer. What we have done actually, which I'm really, really happy with, is that we have used simple tools like SurveyMonkey. And that a guy in my team can create within 5 minutes and it can be floated and it gives you an immediate response. So you really need not have fancy market research, which will take 4 weeks and then there'll be 2 weeks of collation and then there'll be a presentation. I think we are really working on an agile and the researchers probably might not be as thorough, but they give you a very good guidance. So we have been able to crash a time of and also, I think we are in a much better space because with the entire channel adopting to this entire digital technology, the feedback is even faster. Now it's like nanoseconds, I would say.
So more frequent, use of different ways of getting that feedback are the common themes that I'm hearing. It's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine who's also the CMO. He said the most useful or valuable insights that I get actually are from my complaint or call center. Amit, to the point that you were saying, right? That there's this thing which is wrong with the product or installation or whatever, right? So looking at creative ways to get that consumer feedback is something which I think the last few months have taught us. Um, the one question I would have is, I know, and the way I describe it is the last 7 months have seen a bunch of heroic actions from different companies. I think virtually every company that I talk to, there are different groups of people within that company who have really risen to the occasion. done a set of things both for public safety, public health, as well as for the business. I've heard of plants which have run with 40, 50% capacity. I've heard of sales forces which have done much better than what would have done. If you look at your organization, uh, and I'm sure there will be many stories, can you think of one instance where you think the organization has really risen to the challenge and done something different, unique, and which going forward you would like to find a way to preserve in the way that you go ahead? So, not only it's something which you've done, but if you could continue doing that, that will be fantastic. So, uh, and the one thing, just to make it easy, I think work from home we've heard about. So anything but that, and it could be in your marketing organization, it could be related or otherwise. If you have any thoughts on that would be great to hear from.
Maybe I could go. So Abhik, one of the things that we were already engaged with even before the pandemic was this whole area of education, because again, computing is very adjacent to education. We're closely watching it all the time. And we had just undergone a corporate brand transformation. So as a result of that program, we were looking at what are areas in India that we as a company or a brand can make an impact on. And one of the big ones we found in education was the shortage of teachers. If you look at some government statistics, you'll know that we are actually about 1 million teachers short in the country, especially if you look at the government positions, etc. And therefore, kids rarely get access to good teachers. And in some cases, if you go into the hinterland, smaller, the lower tier towns, you'd actually sometimes not have access at all. And therefore, we conceptualized this idea. We said, but there is a teacher among all of us. A lot of us are passionate about subjects that we liked growing up, and a lot of us want to give back. So we created this teacher exchange called Smarter Ed, and the whole idea is very simple. As a kid, as a parent, if you figure out you have a phone, but your kid doesn't have access to a school or a teacher, you can register your kid, and any one of us could actually register as a volunteer teacher. So I say, hey, this is what I'm good at. I've got so much time, etc., etc. And then there's an algorithm which tries to match your teaching style with someone's learning style and creates a match. So that we thought would be an interesting idea to try. Now, this was again just before pandemic happened. And the moment the pandemic happened, we realized that this is more relevant than ever, because now a lot of schools will go online, but a lot of kids will just never have access to schools and actually might miss out on huge learning. And we promoted it. We got some really good response. We had, by the end of 3 months, we had almost 15,000 people sign up to volunteer to teach, which was phenomenal. I mean, we were very skeptical about the idea itself, but we felt, hey, it's a new and different one. We don't know how it's going to play out. So really encouraging, and I hope we are able to preserve it after the pandemic ends.
Great, great. Uh, Ajay, Sanjay.
Yep. So I think there are many. So I can kind of go on and on in terms of what the organization's done. It's a phenomenal. It's an organization whose vision is obviously to help people live better, healthier lives. So I think there could be no bigger mission than helping people live better, healthier lives. And for that, I think nutrition and immunity are critical. There was not even a single day our plant was shut. And there are many plants who got shut. It was not that people didn't have COVID, people went through that, we managed that. But I think every single day across the entire platform, we were committed to kind of get the products. And in fact, if you look at the demand for the immunity products, that category was almost 4x to 5x. So the entire thing of the supply chain, managing the raw material, because a lot of them kind of get imported from outside, some from India. So I think everybody kind of pulled up, and you're working remotely. It's not easy. It's not that you're kind of working in the same environment. So you kind of really orders which were like 50,000 a month went to 5 lakh orders you have to deliver, and now you're struggling because they are containment areas. But people, I think, going beyond the script to kind of do that. So I can't. They are warriors, I would say, absolutely. The other piece, which is, I think, more strategic and which would stay, is a partnership which we forged during this period. So we realized that we are operating in vitamins and dietary supplement, and realized that they are now perceived as a little bit of tablets, a little bit in the medicinal closet. So can we get this vitamins, supplements, immunity to a more food format? And I think we formed a very strategic partnership with ITC, extremely proud of that. Quickly, so though the products were to be launched, so actually the co-branded products will come sometime the first quarter of March, but we did not wait because they had something already available in terms of an clinically tested immunity ingredient for the juices. We clubbed that with our all-plant protein, which is kind of really known for its immunity. And collectively, we got that to the market at, again, a very agile pace, which is, again, supporting the cause of immunity. So I think strategic partnerships is the future. You don't have all the competencies. Somebody else has some other competency. How we are kind of identifying the right strategic partners and carving out a common cause. Their cause is also helping people live better lives. For us also, it was the same. So there was, I think, a great synergy. And I'm glad that the consumers are winning as we kind of got this proposition, and we've got extremely good feedback with this launch over the last 3 or 4 months.
Great. Thank you.
I think one of the things that stood out for us at Uber was, like we spoke earlier, movement was restricted. Reframe that, and we said, what needs to move? And how can Uber enable that across the world? And we distributed 10 million free rides and meals. And what amazed me, because it's still just year 3 for me at Uber, it's a big global org, was that across all cities, all countries, teams were able to reach out to people who really needed to travel, which are medical professionals. And if you type Uber Medic, you will see streams of hospitals, doctors, patients talking about how we as a company made sure that you would take the trip, it would be safe, your payment was not, it didn't matter, the tech was seamless. So you just had to go to the hospital, come back. You had doctors who were in the hospital 48 hours, 72 hours, and they just took an Uber every time they needed to kind of travel. And the second piece was free meals. So, while we look at the pandemic and some of us live slightly more privileged life, things like domestic violence, elderly people just don't have access to a lot of things that come naturally to us. And again, super proud of, how people were able to identify those who really needed that. So orphanages, shelters, and just provided free meals. Not in India, we didn't have that, unfortunately. We did a lot more with doctors and Uber Medic, but globally. And what they did for us is, anyway, it's a very cause and purpose driven company. All startups are, you join, you have a mission, and that's what makes you work 23 hours on a non-stop basis for many, many years. But it really got the team to believe that we can make a positive impact in the world, even though business was down. I think that was very helpful at that time. And now this business is recovering. We're getting a lot more, say, love for the work that we did, say, 6 or 7 months back.
Great. I know we are at the fag end of our discussion. We have 5 minutes left, and one of the questions I'd like you guys to think about and answer is, if there was one specific tip, advice, whatever, right? You may want to call it. If you were to give it to somebody who's in the marketing function today, what is it that you would do? And I just request to keep it short, a minute or so, given that we have about 3-4 minutes left. So what is the one specific piece of advice?
Okay, I'll go first. So obviously, I think the message is online is the new offline, I would say, which is there. And the pandemic has ignited the spark of camaraderie, and consumers have understood we are all in this together. Actually, 39% of the Indian population has the core emotion of accept, unite, and rally together. So consumers are obviously trying new ways to connect with others while maintaining the social distancing. So the social media online community engagement is kind of really up. And health obviously is paramount and one of the core focus areas. Other areas obviously associated are fitness, beauty, lifestyle. And India is among the top countries leveraging immersive technologies like AR and VR. So my message would be that social commerce is the indisputable market breakout trend for the brands in the coming years. The advent of social commerce has led to a lot of interesting concepts such as virtual storefronts, creating personalized experiences. So each one of us should start thinking about it if we have not already kind of thought about it and start putting plans in place. So yeah, that's my message. Thanks.
Thanks, Ajay. You want to go next?
I would say, stay humble as a marketeer. I think we tend to, we all believe that our companies and brands can, change the world. Sometimes it's, I think, as Sanjay, told the beautiful stories at Uber, or as Ajay did. It's more important in times like these to just stay humble and do more for the customer than say.
Got it. Thank you, Sanjay.
So one, Avik, is just for all of us as individuals. Just be kind to yourself. These are tough times. Don't put too much pressure. Life is very difficult. And for the functional experts, I think I just take a leaf out of Amit's book. My favorite line is acts, not ads. Move away from advertising and really try and make a positive change in the world. The consumers will reward you a lot more for that and will remember you a lot more if you actually take actions that enable them to lead better lives.
Great. Thanks a ton, everyone. It's been a fascinating 55 minutes of conversation, and thanks for making it a conversation. If I had to just add my one, or actually I'm going to cheat a bit, two tips which is there. I think the first is building on what Sanjay said, right? I think these are really times that none of us could have imagined 7 months, 8 months back, and therefore, while we are trying to do a lot for everything and everyone, I think just taking care of yourself and your loved ones, I think that's an important one. Don't forget. I think that's the first piece which I would say. The second is I think people on this panel, both on the panel and probably who are watching, I think are amongst the privileged ones. Just by virtue of the fact that we are here and people who are accessing also are privileged. I think thinking about the consumer not only as the consumer, but actually as probably the person who is requiring that service, that need, just keeping that in mind is going to be critical to long-term success. So just keep that in mind. So with that, Jasuri, I'll hand over to you, and I'm bang on dot at 4:45.
Thank you, Avik.
I think it's been a fascinating panel. I've been hearing this myself, and we've got some feedback from the audience also. I mean, the impact on consumer behavior perhaps could never be better explained by anyone rather than such an august panel. Thank you again, and we'll keep connected. In case we have any questions from the audience, we might want to pass them on to you as well later. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
See you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.